Name is Alice Callahan Thompson. I am living in New York City, pursuing acting and modeling, and I have a heart for adoption. I originally, I think that this was put on my heart when I started visiting international orphanages in high school. I had the opportunity to go to Mexico a few times and meet these amazing children, and I just remember thinking, how can this be? How can it be that there are so many precious children without the love of a family? Um, it made a huge impact on me, and I thought to myself, I want to make a difference someday in the life of a child. Then I moved to New York and I got married, and my husband and I got involved with an orphanage that's based in Kenya called Many Hopes, and we got to visit a few times. And similarly, my heart just grew for children who don't have the security and the love of a family. And these are amazing children, but it's still heartbreaking to see that they don't have the reliability of a safe and stable family life. So my husband and I um, just thought, okay, look, let's make a difference in one of the lives of a child. So when we started talking about starting our family, we just said, okay, before jumping into biological or pursuing biological kids, let's just take a pause and pray and think how we want to start our family, because there's so many kids that need homes and we want to be parents. So it just kind of made sense that we would consider the option of adoption. We just thought, what if we take a child who needs a home and put him or her in as the foundation of our family, and let's build our family with a child from adoption, because we also understand that we were adopted, spiritually speaking, to God's family. We really believe that we are all sons and daughters of God's, because He invited us into His family through adoption. So that might sound kind of crazy, but we believed enough to start this crazy journey, and we're happy that we did. Yeah, so we kind of took a long journey, but we learned a lot along the way. As I was talking earlier about the orphanage in Kenya that we spent time, we originally thought we wanted to adopt internationally because our experience had been with international orphanages. So we pursued the adoption process in Kenya, and then more substantially, we pursued it in Ethiopia. And I don't know how much you would know about international adoption, but it's a challenging process as well. There's a lot of room for improvement. Um, Sadly, there's a lot of corruption in a lot of these more developing countries, and they don't have the resources to be able to process these adoptions in a safe and timely way. And it's unfortunate because the people who suffer the most are the children who are growing and aging in the orphanages. Um, and meanwhile, there are waiting families all over the world who want to be matched with these children. So one of my hopes and prayers for the future is to somehow become an advocate to help streamline international adoption, um, because there's so many kids in orphanages, and again, there's so many waiting families that are qualified and waiting with open arms, but somehow it's not matching up. So after waiting for about 2 years for Ethiopia, um, we were told that it was going to be another 5 years, because they were temporarily shutting down their program at the time, just to like reboot and make sure they were um, cleaning up anything that had been subject to corruption. So we just thought, like, oh my gosh, like 5 more years. How are we going to wait 5 more years to adopt? But we feel like God called us to adopt first. But like, I couldn't imagine waiting 5 more years. So we're like, okay, Lord, what do you want us to do? And meanwhile, we got to know this teenager in our church, actually, who wasn't technically in the foster care system, but he was kind of looking for a safe and stable home. And we were able to provide that for him for a amount of time. And it kind of opened up our eyes to the need domestically for safe and stable homes for kids. And so we had him for a year, and that totally opened up our heart, like I said, to the need domestically. And so we thought, okay, Lord, like we asked for a baby, gave us a 17-year-old. This is kind of great, but it's totally what God like had planned because our relationship with that individual is still really strong today, and we care for him a lot. And he actually taught us so much. We thought we were like giving him a great home, and we teach him so much, but really, like my husband and I were like, oh my gosh, we need help. We're learning how to do this. So it was an amazing, like crazy crash course into parenting a teenager, which I'm grateful for. But during that journey, we decided to just make it available for us to adopt domestically from anywhere in the country. Because we had heard that that was happening, more regularly than the international adoptions. And so we said, okay, Lord, let's just sign up for infant adoption and see what happens. Trying to trust you every step of the way. And then that took just under a year. And then we brought home our little guy. So we went on a wild journey, but it was all worth it. So we adopted through Bethany Christian Services, and yeah, and we had a great experience with them. They're there to support you, and I guess the hardest parts of our journey, um, the waiting or the disappointment, were things that they can't control. I mean, they're doing the best they can, but at the end of the day, you're signing up for a kind of vulnerable experience where you don't know what to expect. But they are great support during that, and then they've been great support even after too. Once we switched to domestic, we it took us about 6 months to get our first referral, which is when you think you're getting a match. Because essentially how it works is you make a profile book of your family, some photos and a little bio of you and your family and your dog or whatever. Then the birth mothers have the opportunity to look through the books and choose what family they want to place their child with, which we think is great because it really empowers the birth mother that she has the choice into where she is placing this precious child that she's been carrying for at least 9 months. Had, had him or her longer too. Um, but we so we made our book and waited, waited, and then 6 months in, we got a referral, a match, and it was very exciting. It was Christmas Eve. We flew back here where we were in the South, and we drove to the hospital, and they're like, "Baby boy, born in Connecticut, come, right away." So we like drove as fast as we could safely, and we're in the parking lot, and we thought our lives were about to change, and then we got a call saying, "I'm so sorry, it didn't work out." Yeah, she's gone home with child, and that was really tough because even though we'd only known about him for 24 hours, it's like we had been preparing for him for 3 years. So we left the hospital and we just thought, like, okay, Lord, we know you've called us to this, but this is really hard. However, we have to trust you that this is the right thing for him to be with his biological mother and grandma. The grandmother wanted to step in and help care for the child. And so looking back, I mean, I think that's great that the child was able to stay connected to his biological grandmother. And so, like, of course, now I'm like, everything's fine, everything's great. But at the time, I was like, wow, this is really tough. Um, and then that happened 2 more times, not so dramatically the next 2 times because we didn't actually go to the hospital, but we had been, I guess, up for a referral, and the birth mother was deciding between us and other families. And then 2 times the birth mother chose other adoptive families, which is great because that's more families adopting. But at the time, of course, it was disappointing because you get your hopes up. So those were like the toughest moments of it. But of course, I'm like, God, thank you that every single one of those children did not work out because this child in my home is absolutely the child that was meant to be ours. Like, it's scary, like too much like us. I'm like, oh no. So we're Facebook friends. Yeah. Facebook. Thanks, Mark Zuckerberg for Facebook. But yeah, it's really nice because she's able to see pictures of him, and she says how much it means to her to get to see how well he's doing, which we're so happy to get to show her because we want to honor her and say, like, you know, hey, we're not perfect parents, but thank you. You made this great choice for him because um, this is the life that he has. And he always says she enjoys seeing what he's up to. And so we message occasionally, and ideally we'd like to see her every few years. We've only been able to connect once since the placement. Um, but our prayer is that every few years we could have a visit with her, for both of them and for us too. You know, we want to honor her. This is the person who is responsible for bringing our son into the world. Like we honor her, and um, you know, we share the title of mother. Of course, I'm the mother. I'm the everyday mother. I'm the day in day out, the real mom. But I can't help, you know, feel connected to this person who carried him in her womb for 9 months and made the choice out of love, for what was best for him, considering her circumstances. So yeah, we'd like to stay in touch and see each other every few years. And for his sake too, we want him to have a positive view, which he should, of this amazing person who said, I want to give you, more than I could give you, and I wanted to give you, a complete home. I mean, I was surprised at the failed matches, even though I had heard that that happened. I think I was just optimistic and thought like, oh, that won't happen to us. Like, you know, we'll get a call and we'll be this crazy fly to another state and then go to the hospital and pick up the baby, like the videos you see. So I was optimistic that that would be our story, and yeah, it was surprising to get your hopes up and then for it to not work out. Um, and I don't know if there's any way for people to be prepared for that, but I think just knowing that it's really common and that's part of the journey is what I would tell someone who's in that process, just to hold strong and be patient because it will work out, and that the child that you will get is the child that is meant to be yours. But easy for me to say now. At the time, it was hard. Well, I have to say the adopttogether.org website is fantastic. No, but really, we're big fans of, the adoption fundraising initiative because for so long, adoption was seen like, oh, it's too expensive, we just can't afford it, and people just kind of felt stuck if they didn't have the finances just laying around. And I'm so thrilled for organizations like Adopt Together that say, hey, look, let's champion around you and help you fundraise. But it really says like, look, there's no shame in fundraising for an adoption. In fact, you're giving someone the honor and opportunity to join your family. It's a gift. If someone doesn't feel like they can adopt themselves, they might want to contribute so that you can, and they can be a part of the story. Whether you're adopting domestically, internationally, or from foster care, there are financial needs, and your community can rally around you and say, "We support you." Whether they're having, you know, bake sales or car washes or whatever, anything that someone wants to give is a way of inviting them into your story. And I think it's something to be celebrated. And I'm a big fan of the Adopt Together program. Um, there's a blog called Fosterhood, that's written by a New York mom who's, in the process of adopting from foster care, and it's really opened up my eyes to, the system that needs a lot of help. Like I said, there's so many waiting children, and there are some waiting families, and it's about getting, government advocates to say like, this is important. Let's let's streamline this process so that a child doesn't have to wait for years and years and years to be able to share the last name as their caretakers. People who want to adopt them, but they're caught up in red tape. I think that there has to be a way that, that we can advocate on the behalf of the child, putting the child's welfare as paramount to anyone else's. And if the child's is better off with their foster family than their biological for whatever reason, the courts need to rule in the favor of the adoptive family. So I'm learning a lot about that. But yeah, fosterhood is a blog. Yeah, um, I think that in addition to reaching out to people who have adopted, I think just educating your friends and family on what you're going through. because again, before I started the process, I wouldn't have known either what it's like, and the common person doesn't really know what the journey is like and how hard it is to wait and to not know if your life is going to change today or if it's going to take a whole year or 2 years. Like it's a really vulnerable place to be, to not know what the timeline is. Excuse me. So I think communities can help by being invited into the story. So it takes that kind of vulnerability of sharing what you're going through with your friends and family, sending them resources, sending them videos. That's what we did. We're like, look, we're learning all this stuff and we're going to need some help. So check out some of these resources that we found online, because it is different. There's something different about it for sure, than biological pregnancy, because you're just opening up to so many different other factors. Pregnancy is hard too. Don't get me wrong. Here I am, 8 months. I'm like, but but there's the unknown of adoption, that can be really tough. So I think inviting people in and then letting them and then giving them things to do. Like someone might say, "Oh, let me know how I can help." But if you really do need help, just say, "Look, we got a call that we're going to have to travel for this child. We don't know if it's going to work out." Just looping them in, and saying like, we might need some help either way, and then saying, "Look, we just got home with this brand new baby. Things aren't all we expected. This is crazy. We haven't had time to go grocery shopping." Because people want to help you. If they're reaching out for you, they want to help you. So again, I keep talking about food. I'm hungry. I think food is a great way to be supportive. Also think that people can, once a family is more established, people can offer to babysit, which is really, really great, to give the parents or the individual a little time off. That's also helpful and very important for being a good mom or dad, to have a little time off. So I think communities can say, "So glad you adopted. Let me know when I can babysit. If you need an hour or you need a night, whatever it is." I think that's huge. I guess that's the same for biological kids too. But what else can people do? Um, I think just following up, and when you're in the waiting stage too, and just texting and just being like, "How are you? I'm thinking about you, praying for you," because chances are every single day that goes by that waiting parent doesn't get a phone call is another day that's hard. So I think that reaching out and just saying, "I'm thinking about you, you're not alone," I think goes a long way. Yeah, it's all getting blurry now that I'm again 8 months pregnant. I'm like, yeah. So why we chose to do it in this order? Well, we we felt like this calling from God that I described, which sounds like mystical and crazy, but practically speaking, we thought like, um, putting this child as first, we could just make sure that he or she knew um, that he or she was our like first choice, which sounds kind of weird because again, I support any order. If you adopt first or like 17th, it doesn't matter. But for us, we wanted to be able to tell him or her that we felt like, God wanted us to start our family with him or her. Um, so we thought that might make, possible challenges of adoption, where the child may or may not feel, um, some element of rejection from a birth parent or something like that. We thought it would be helpful to be able to say, you are first choice. We don't know how this is all going to play out. We pray that God will lead us, and that our child always secure and always feels confident with where he is in life. But we don't know what to expect. But we thought that it would be helpful for him or her to be the first. We also thought if we started with biological, um, and this is just us, we just thought if we started biological, we would be like, okay, we know how this works. Let's just do this again, and do it again, and then all of a sudden you have 4 biological kids, and you're like, we literally don't have room for more. And that sounds crazy too, because if we really were passionate, we would make it happen. But I guess I've just seen so many people say like, "Oh, I always wanted to adopt, but we can't now. We have three kids." Oh, it's like, oh. And, seriously, and like, I'm not trying to like be like so judgmental, but I understand how that could happen. Like, you start biological, and once you do it once, you're like, okay, I I get it. Let's do this again. Because most people want to have more than one child, and then as time goes by, your home fills up, and you don't see yourself being able to make a space for another child. Um, so we wanted to kind of like make sure to adopt, so we decided to do it first. Um, what else? I think also, if someone is choosing to adopt an older child, I think there's a lot of advantages to adopting first, because you are able to give that child undivided attention, um, and you're also uh, not having to think of the dynamic between your current biological toddler or baby or whatever, and then entering in a new person. I think that, I mean, again, God will cover you, and that'll be great if you're called to do it. But I think that there's probably an advantage to um, having, giving that adopted teenager your, attention. Um, and I don't know. I mean, there's so many different scenarios that could play out, and there's not one that's better than the other whatsoever. I really think that if God puts it on your heart, it can be made. It can happen no matter what. If you already have five biological kids and it makes no sense to adopt, it makes sense in God's kingdom, Or if you have like if you have like triplet babies and it makes no sense to take in a teenager, it could make sense in God's kingdom. And there could be this amazing teenager who needs a home, who like wants to help you love the other babies, and they're more like a, you know, fun aunt than a sibling. But, I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, isn't it cool that we can open up our homes and not know what they're going to look like? Like, it's exciting that that if you enter in the world of adoption and foster care, you're saying like, we don't know what our family's going to look like, and that's actually kind of cool and exciting. I just want to encourage people that um, adoption is not a plan B. It's not, oh, you know, let's try for biological first, and if it doesn't work, let's adopt, which is totally fine. Don't get me wrong. I think any adoption is amazing, and it's totally God ordained and meant to be. But I pray that there can be a new generation of people that say, regardless of biological abilities or whatever, let's consider building families with adoption, whether it's first, middle, last, doesn't matter. But adoption can be an addition to a biological family. It doesn't have to be one or the other, is what I'm trying to say. I think that you either see families with a bunch of adopted kids or a bunch of biological kids, and that's all fine. But my prayer is that as the years go by, we'll start to see more families that are woven together through, if possible, biological and adoption, because I think that that is the kingdom of God. People brought together under one love. And I'm not saying it's easy. And, my son's only 2. I have a lot of challenges ahead of us. Um, I'm not saying it's easy, but I believe that it is good. And it reminds me of this quote from Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. And it's when Lucy is asking the beaver about Aslan, the wise lion. And she says, "But is he safe?" And the beaver says, "No, of course he isn't safe, but he is good. He's king." And to me, I'm just like, is it safe? Like, no, of course it isn't safe. Is it risky? Is it hard? Are you, opening up your home in the most vulnerable way possible? Like, yeah, that's not easy, but it is good.